Undercover boss orders breakfast at his own restaurant, freezes when waitress complains about tips. The rain pounded against the windshield of Dwayne Johnson's rented Ford pickup as he pulled into the lot of Sunrise Diner, No. 28. The vehicle was a perfect match for his disguise. Faded jeans, a flannel shirt, and a trucker cap tugged low over a graying beard and glasses. No one would suspect that the man parking this beat-up truck was, in fact, the CEO of Sunrise Restaurant Group, and that's exactly how Dwayne wanted it. He checked his watch. 7:30 a.m., prime time for the breakfast rush. It was the perfect moment to observe the location that, at least on paper, seemed profitable and well-run. His regional manager, Stan, had praised this branch repeatedly, calling it a model location during their last quarterly review. But something didn't sit right with Dwayne. The turnover rate here was nearly triple that of other diners in the chain. Online reviews were peppered with comments about a weird vibe and service that felt off. Employee satisfaction surveys showed a steep decline in morale. Stan brushed it off as growing pains, insisting that Doug, the manager Dwayne himself had promoted 3 years ago, had everything under control. But Dwayne needed to see it for himself. He studied the diner's flickering neon sign, which cast an uneven glow across the wet parking lot. Inside, truckers, shift workers, and locals escaping the dreary Monday morning filled the booths. Dwayne tugged his cap lower, rehearsed his cover story one more time. Walt Simmons, a retired long-haul trucker passing through town to visit his daughter. He stepped into the diner, the bell above the door chiming softly. The comforting scent of coffee, bacon, and pancakes washed over him, stark against the cold autumn rain. His trained eyes immediately noticed the small details. The floor was mostly clean, but the corners of the entryway were neglected. The Employee of the Month board still featured August's winner, though it was now mid-October. The little things spoke volumes. A young hostess named Amber approached him, wearing a uniform missing the company's signature sunrise pin. Her forced smile barely masked her fatigue. "Just one today?" she asked. Dwayne nodded in his practiced, gravelly voice, adding a hint of a southern drawl. "Yes, ma'am, just passing through." She led him to a small booth near the kitchen entrance, the perfect vantage point. Amber slapped a laminated menu on the table and mumbled something about a server coming by soon, then walked off. No welcome script, no eye contact. Strike one. From his seat, Dwayne observed the restaurant's rhythm. 3 servers worked the floor. 2 of them, young men in crisp, spotless uniforms, strolled between tables, chatting near the coffee station, handling only a couple of tables each. The 3rd server, a woman, caught his attention. She moved with quiet efficiency, balancing 3 plates on one arm while pouring coffee with the other. Her name tag read Cassie. Her uniform was neat but visibly worn, the Sunrise logo slightly frayed. She carried herself with the grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Her smile genuine but tired, with dark circles barely concealed, under makeup. When Cassie approached his table, slightly breathless but composed, Dwayne felt the weight of her exhaustion. "Good morning. Sorry about the wait," she said softly. "Coffee to start you off?" Her smile warmed the space between them. "Yes, please. Black as night," Dwayne replied, playing along with his cover. As she poured, he noticed her hands, steady but with a faint tremor that revealed long hours on her feet. "Our special today is the Trucker's Delight. 3 eggs your way, bacon, sausage, hash browns, and buttermilk pancakes," she recited with a tired wink. "Enough to fuel you for another 300 miles. Dwayne chuckled softly. "Perfect recommendation. I'll take that. Eggs over medium." Cassie scribbled the order down and asked, "Been on the road long?" Dwayne replied with a smile. "Just retired last month. 40 years behind the wheel. Now I'm seeing the country without deadlines." Cassie's eyes lit up briefly, then softened. "That sounds wonderful. Freedom after all that time." But something in her voice caught, a hitch that made Dwayne realized that the idea of freedom resonated a little too deeply for her. As she headed to the kitchen, Dwayne leaned back in his seat. The CEO instincts in him were already on high alert. Something wasn't adding up at Sunrise Diner. From his booth, Dwayne Johnson scanned the diner, the rhythm of the morning rush playing out in a way that felt a little too orchestrated. He leaned back casually, sipping the dark, bitter coffee Cassie had poured, his eyes tracking every movement. The floor staff dynamics were glaringly clear. Cassie, with her tired smile and seamless multitasking, darted between tables, her section visibly busier than the others. She handled 12 tables single-handedly, while the two young male servers, Ryan and Jason, their name tags confirming what Dwayne suspected, each managed just 4. Dwayne's decades of experience in the restaurant business had taught him to recognize when something felt off. The split of responsibilities wasn't just inefficient, it seemed intentional. The two men took their time, hovering near the coffee station, sharing private jokes, while Cassie hustled non-stop. Dwayne's trained eyes noted how Ryan and Jason often inserted themselves into Cassie's tables at just the right moments. Whenever customers paid with cards, one of them would conveniently appear to process the payment. As Cassie refilled coffee and took new orders, the two men casually handled transactions that should have been hers. This wasn't just favoritism, it was a well-rehearsed dance, choreographed to funnel tips their way. The undercurrent of resentment and imbalance was palpable. As the rush continued, Dwayne spotted Doug Henderson through the pass window of the kitchen. He was leaner than the man Dwayne remembered from his polished corporate headshot. Doug's expression was sharp, calculating, and as he spoke to Ryan, sharing a laugh while both glanced toward Cassie, it was clear to Dwayne that the manager was orchestrating more than just shift schedules. Doug was the spider at the center of this web, ensuring his circle benefited at the expense of others. Dwayne's gut twisted. This wasn't just bad management. It was a deliberate system designed to exploit hard-working employees. Cassie returned to Dwayne's table with his breakfast, a picture-perfect trucker's delight, plated precisely to company standards. She set it down with a practiced smile, but the exhaustion in her eyes betrayed her. "Busy morning for you," Dwayne remarked casually, keeping his tone light. He gestured subtly toward the leisurely servers nearby. "You're working twice as hard as those fellas over there?" Cassie hesitated, her smile faltering. Her eyes flicked toward the kitchen, checking if anyone was listening. "It's just how the schedule worked out," she said carefully, her voice dropping slightly. Dwayne pushed gently, taking a bite of the perfectly crisp bacon. "Tips must be good at least." The brief pause before her response spoke volumes. Cassie adjusted the coffee pot in her hand, her knuckles tightening around the handle. "Morning shifts are actually the worst for tips," she said quietly. Her voice dropped even lower, so faint he almost missed it. "Especially when we split them. But only certain people actually get them." Before Dwayne could press further, Cassie was called away to another table. He watched her go, his breakfast untouched, the gears in his mind turning. The pieces were falling into place. This was more than poor staffing decisions or training gaps. This was systemic, and it stank of something far darker. Cassie had unknowingly served him the first piece of evidence that something at Sunrise Diner, though 28, was deeply, fundamentally wrong. He lingered over his coffee, his CEO instincts sharpening with each passing minute. As he observed the flow of the morning, the pattern became clearer. Cassie was handling far more than her fair share, her tips siphoned away by a system that was rigged against her. Meanwhile, Ryan and Jason floated effortlessly through their shifts, their hands always at the digital POS, processing transactions. From tables they hadn't served. Doug Henderson's laugh echoed faintly from the kitchen, his smirk visible through the pass window. Dwayne's jaw tightened. He had come undercover to check for inefficiencies. Instead, he had stumbled into a system of favoritism and financial manipulation. And Cassie, with her tired smile and frayed uniform, had just given him the first clue. Dwayne's hands tightened around his coffee mug as he pieced the situation together. The casual corruption he'd just witnessed wasn't an accident. It was systematic and deliberate. Cassie, unknowingly, had handed him a key piece of evidence, but he needed more. He wasn't going to rely on casual observations. He needed hard proof. Pulling out his phone discreetly, he dialed a number few people in the company had. "Mara, it's Dwayne. I need you to drop everything and meet me in an hour. Bring the team and all the tools. We're digging into Sunrise Diner number 28. His voice was low, but the resolve was unmistakable. On the other end, Mara Jenkins, Sunrise's head of internal investigations, confirmed quickly. As he hung up, he glanced back toward the kitchen, noting Doug's smug posture and Ryan's relaxed banter at the coffee station. Dwayne's jaw tightened. They thought they were untouchable. That was about to change. Within hours, Mara and her team gathered in a makeshift command center at a nearby conference room. Dwayne, now out of his Walt Simmons disguise and back in business attire, though he kept the beard in case he needed to re-enter unnoticed, paced the room. "Show me what we've got," he instructed. Mara pulled up payroll records, cross-referencing them with POS logs and scheduling data. Doug created an auxiliary server classification in the system that doesn't exist in our handbook, she pointed out, highlighting several lines. Cassie's profile falls under this category, along with 7 others. Dwayne leaned in, his brow furrowing. And when they're classified as auxiliary, the system doesn't assign them digital tips? Mara nodded. Exactly. Instead, the tips automatically route to whoever's designated as the primary POS operator. Guess who that is most of the time? Luis, the data analyst, brought up the next screen. Ryan Henderson, about 67% of the time. The remaining share is split among 3 others, all of them tied closely to Doug. Dwayne's gut churned, and the rest of the tips, Luis clicked to a separate spreadsheet. Cash tips are counted by Doug and distributed at the end of the shift, but it's not even. Watch this. He played security footage from a recent lunch shift where Doug was clearly seen doling out cash from a metal box, giving Ryan and select others noticeably larger shares, while Cassie and others received far less. Even without audio, the body language was telling. Doug's dismissive wave as Cassie questioned the distribution, Ryan's smug grin in the background. "What about complaints?" Dwayne asked, his voice cold. Tanya, the investigator handling HR data, slid a thin folder across the table. Only 3 formal complaints in 6 months, all marked resolved by regional management. But here's the thing. The complaints were intercepted before they reached Stan. They were handled directly by Doug's assistant manager. Dwayne scanned the signature, Ryan Henderson. "And exit interviews?" Tanya nodded. "We called 6 former employees. 5 described the same pattern. Questioning tip distribution led to punishment shifts, early mornings, or the worst sections. Eventually they left." Mara added quietly, "Cassie hasn't left because she can't afford to. Her student loans come due next month. She's hanging on by a thread." The weight of the situation pressed down on Dwayne. This wasn't just favoritism. It was theft, exploitation, and systemic abuse. Conservatively, we estimate at least $18,000 in misappropriated tips in the last quarter alone, Luis added. Dwayne clenched his fists. "Enough to terminate them immediately," Mara said. "The question is, how do you want to handle it?" Dwayne stepped to the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. The easy path would be to terminate Doug and Ryan quietly, minimize the fallout, and move on. But as he thought of Cassie, her tired but determined expression haunted him. That wasn't justice. It wasn't enough. "I have a different approach," he said finally. "Here's what we're going to do." Dwayne Johnson stood by the window of the impromptu command center, The rain from the night before now reduced to a light drizzle outside. His mind raced through every detail, every angle. This wasn't going to be a quiet termination. This wasn't going to be swept under the rug. "We're going to make this public," he said, his voice calm but firm, drawing the attention of his entire team. Mara, Luis, and Tanya exchanged looks of both anticipation and concern. "Here's the plan," Dwayne continued, stepping away from the window. "Tomorrow morning, during the peak breakfast rush, we're going back to Sunrise Diner de Room 28. I want this confrontation to be seen by everyone, staff, customers, anyone who might have doubted the integrity of this place. We'll catch Doug and Ryan in the act and make sure everyone sees the evidence." Mara raised an eyebrow. "That's bold, Dwayne. We already have enough to fire them. Why the spectacle?" Dwayne's jaw set. "Because this isn't just about firing two people. This is about showing the entire company and every other Cassie out there that we're not afraid to stand up for what's right. We'll be setting a precedent that nobody, no matter how entrenched they think they are, is above accountability." The weight of his words settled over the room. Mara nodded, understanding. Luis started typing rapidly, pulling up POS data and cross-referencing Cassie's shift schedule. Tanya prepared the files, organizing the evidence into a clear, irrefutable case. They would need everything perfectly aligned for tomorrow. The next morning, Dwayne dressed with precision. He maintained his Walt Simmons persona, though slightly refined. Cleaner clothes, a newer pair of jeans, and a sharper flannel shirt. He slipped the prepaid loyalty card into his wallet, a key piece in his plan. Mara, dressed as a casual customer and playing the role of his daughter, adjusted her glasses and checked the recording app hidden on her phone. "Ready?" she asked quietly. Dwayne nodded. "Let's go get them." They entered Sunrise Diner number 28 together, the bell above the door chiming its familiar greeting. A different hostess from before seated them in a corner booth, her tone mechanical as she promised a server would be with them soon. Dwayne's sharp eyes scanned the room. The breakfast rush was in full swing, and the patterns were the same, Cassie juggling twice the tables of anyone else while Ryan chatted leisurely, his charm turned up for select customers. Doug loitered near the register, overseeing everything. With an air of control. "Cassie's over there," Dwayne murmured to Mara. "Ryan's by the window. Doug's watching from the back." Mara tapped her phone screen, activating the recording. "Everything they say to us gets logged," she whispered. Cassie's voice broke through the murmur of the diner. "Walt, you're back," she greeted, her tired smile blooming with genuine surprise. "Couldn't stay away from those pancakes," Dwayne replied warmly, playing along. "This is my daughter, Mara. Thought I'd show her the place I've been raving about." Cassie's smile faltered briefly, her eyes darting toward Doug's watchful gaze. "Actually," she hesitated, "Ryan will be your server today. Doug likes to rotate returning customers." Dwayne's voice stayed steady. "Any particular reason?" Cassie hesitated, her expression tightening. "Just policy," she said, her voice dropping. Before she could say more, Ryan approached the table with his polished, practiced charm. "Good morning, folks. I'm Ryan. I'll be taking care of you today." Cassie mentioned something about rotating returning customers. Dwayne nodded slowly. "Yeah, something like that." Ryan's smile widened, a mask of customer service. "We like to make sure everyone gets the full Sunrise experience. Different servers bring different energy, you know." Dwayne played along, handing Ryan the loyalty card. "I heard about your new loyalty program from a buddy. Got myself a card online. Thought I'd give it a try." Ryan's eyes lit up with interest. "Great idea. That card gives you a 5% discount. Plus, they're preloaded with funds, so checkout's a breeze." Dwayne nodded approvingly. "Glad to hear it." He placed the order, choosing the Grand Slam special, while Mara opted for eggs and toast. As they ate, Dwayne observed closely. Cassie continued handling the majority of tables, but was once again blocked from processing payments. Ryan, meanwhile, casually processed transactions for tables he hadn't even served. When the meal ended, Dwayne deliberately slowed his movements, taking out the prepaid loyalty card with a subtle flourish. "I'd like to pay with this," he told Ryan, "and add a $50 tip." Ryan's eyebrows rose slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he recovered. "Wow, that's very generous." "Good service deserves recognition," Dwayne said pointedly. "I assume all servers share in the tips equally." Ryan's smile twitched ever so slightly before smoothing out. "Absolutely. Everyone gets their fair share at the end of the shift." Dwayne slid the card across the table with deliberate calm. "Glad to hear it." As Ryan processed the payment, Mara caught Dwayne's eye, giving him a subtle nod. Phase 1 was complete. The next morning, the sky broke open into an unexpected, brilliant sunshine. It was as if the weather itself was clearing to make way for what was about to unfold. At precisely 8:45 a.m., 3 black SUVs rolled into the Sunrise Diner, not to the 28 parking lot. The sleek, corporate vehicles glistened in the sun, turning heads as they parked directly in front of the entrance. Inside, the breakfast rush was in full swing. Cassie was at the coffee station, refilling cups with her usual efficiency when she noticed the commotion outside. Her heart rate spiked. Health inspectors? Maybe, but they usually didn't roll up in a convoy like that. Immigration officers. That thought was terrifying, though everyone on the staff had proper documentation. Still, her hands trembled slightly as she set the pot down, her pulse quickening. The diner fell into a hush as the doors swung open. First came 2 men and a woman in sharp business attire, each carrying folders and sleek tablets. Behind them, a distinguished older woman with silver-streaked hair and a no-nonsense expression. And finally, Dwayne Johnson entered, wearing an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, his rugged face set in stone, eyes sharp with authority. Cassie's coffee pot clattered against the counter as recognition struck her. Walt, the kind, chatty customer from a few days ago, was gone. In his place stood a man, radiating power and intent. Doug emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands. On a towel, a forced smile plastered on his face. "Mr. Johnson, what an unexpected pleasure. If I'd known you were coming." Dwayne's voice cut through the room, clear and commanding. "Clearly," he said coolly. The corporate team spread out, quietly blocking exits and positioning themselves strategically around the restaurant. Customers paused, forks hovering over plates. Conversations silenced. Dwayne stepped forward, surveying the room with the calm confidence of a general addressing his troops. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying through the diner, "I apologize for the interruption. I'm Dwayne Johnson, CEO of Sunrise Restaurant Group. We're conducting an emergency corporate review that cannot wait. Please enjoy complimentary meals on us today." One of his team members handed out vouchers as confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Doug's face tightened, a nervous laugh bubbling up. "Mr. Johnson, if I'd known you were coming, we would have prepared..." "Prepared what, Doug?" Dwayne cut him off sharply. "A different staff schedule, a temporary adjustment to the tip distribution, maybe a quiet deletion of the transaction records." Doug's expression darkened as he faltered. Ryan, frozen by the coffee station, instinctively took a step toward the back exit, but Mara blocked his path effortlessly. "I wouldn't," she said quietly. "Security has already been instructed to detain anyone trying to leave without authorization." Dwayne moved to the center of the restaurant, his voice unwavering. "I visited this location earlier this week as a customer named Walt. What I discovered was disturbing enough to trigger a full corporate investigation." He opened his leather portfolio, revealing documents and screenshots. Doug Henderson and Ryan Henderson stepped forward. Reluctantly, the uncle and nephew complied, their faces pale. Over the past 6 months, you've systematically diverted employee tips through manipulation of our POS system and loyalty program. You created fraudulent employee classifications to redirect digital gratuities. You've intimidated staff, intercepted complaints and silenced voices that tried to speak up. Doug's face twisted in a desperate smile. These are baseless accusations. Surely we can resolve this. 18,142.63, Dwayne said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. That's the exact amount of tips misappropriated in the last quarter alone. We have transaction logs, witness testimonies, video evidence, and direct observations. We even conducted our own test yesterday. A $50 tip meant for Cassie that was rerouted to Ryan. Ryan's face turned ashen. Uncle Doug, you said no one would check the logs. He stopped abruptly, realizing his mistake. Doug shot him a venomous glare, but it was too late. Mr. Johnson, this is all a misunderstanding, Doug began, but Dwayne's glare stopped him. Theft is not a misunderstanding. It's a crime, he said firmly. He turned to address the staff and customers, his voice steady and resolute. As of this moment, Doug and Ryan Henderson are terminated from Sunrise Restaurant Group. We will be pressing charges for theft and fraud. This ends now. 2 corporate team members stepped forward, escorting the disgraced pair toward the exit. Doug struggled briefly, his protests falling flat against the collective weight of evidence. This is my restaurant. I built it from nothing, he shouted. No, Doug, Dwayne said calmly. You inherited a thriving location with loyal employees, and you exploited them. The people who truly built this place are standing right here, and they deserve better. As the 2 men were led out, Cassie stepped forward, her face pale, but her eyes shining with gratitude and disbelief. You were never just a trucker, were you? She asked softly. Dwayne's stern expression softened just slightly. No, Cassie. But everything I saw here was real, especially the theft of your hard-earned tips. A month had passed since the dramatic showdown at Sunrise Diner, 28. This morning, Dwayne Johnson returned, but this time there were no disguises, no SUV entourage, no calculated confrontations. The bell over the door chimed softly as he stepped inside, greeted not by silence and tension, but by the lively hum of a thriving restaurant. The dining room, bathed in morning light streaming through freshly cleaned windows, felt transformed. Servers moved with a confident ease, their smiles genuine, their movements purposeful. The days of suspicion and quiet resignation were gone. Near the entrance, a new digital display featured photos of the day's staff, alongside a clear breakdown of the tip-sharing system, visible for customers and employees alike. It was a simple yet powerful statement of transparency, one that signaled change had not only arrived, but taken root. Good morning, Mr. Johnson, Cassie's voice called from nearby. She approached with a new confidence, wearing a crisp uniform with a manager's pin glinting proudly on her collar. The dark circles that had once shadowed her eyes were gone, replaced by a spark of determination. Good morning, Manager Taylor, Dwayne replied warmly, unable to suppress the genuine smile that tugged at his lips. Cassie gestured toward a familiar booth by the kitchen entrance, the same one where he had once sat as Walt. Your usual table's ready, she said. Though I hope you don't mind if I join you for a few minutes. The morning rush hasn't quite started yet. As they settled in, Dwayne's trained eye caught the subtle but important changes in the restaurant's operations. Staff now rotated between sections based on a visible schedule chart. The POS system had been updated, with each server using individual login cards to ensure accurate tracking of tips. The old, corrupt system was gone, replaced by a model of fairness and accountability. How's the new system working out? Dwayne asked, as Cassie poured his coffee, a gesture she insisted on performing personally whenever he visited. Transparency makes all the difference, she said with a satisfied nod. Everyone can see exactly how much in tips comes in and how they're divided. The dashboard updates in real time. No more mysterious shortfalls or unexplained adjustments. Dwayne nodded approvingly. Cassie's role had expanded far beyond what she could have imagined just weeks ago. After the scandal, Dwayne had entrusted her with helping design the new tip-sharing protocol, which was now being rolled out across all 147 Sunrise locations. "And your classes?" he asked, his tone softening. "Final semester starts next week," she replied, her eyes sparkling with hope. The promotion package covered the tuition, and the settlement from Doug and Ryan made up for everything they stole. Dwayne's smile widened. The legal proceedings against the Hendersons had been swift and decisive. Faced with overwhelming evidence, they had agreed to full restitution and penalties rather than face public trial. The story had become a viral sensation in the restaurant industry, a cautionary tale about integrity, justice, and the cost of greed. "How's the team adjusting?" Dwayne inquired, glancing toward the kitchen, where new faces worked seamlessly, alongside familiar ones. "Better than I expected," Cassie replied. "We kept everyone who wasn't part of the scheme. The new hires are thriving, and the anonymous reporting hotline you set up has been a game changer. People feel safe speaking up now." Dwayne's nod was one of satisfaction and relief. "Regional oversights improved too. Stan checks in weekly without fail," Cassie added, allowing herself a small, knowing smile. "Though he still looks terrified every time he steps through the door." They both laughed quietly. Before he left, Dwayne walked through the kitchen, greeting each staff member with a handshake and a few words of encouragement. In the back office, once Doug's dominion, Cassie's accounting textbook sat neatly, beside management manuals, a symbol of her new chapter. "We're on track to beat last quarter's numbers by 17%, she said proudly, walking him to the door. "Happy employees make happy customers. Who knew?" Dwayne gave her a playful wink. "Some of us always suspected." Outside, as he glanced back through the window, he saw Cassie resume her duties with confident authority. Behind her, a new, framed mission statement hung on the wall, developed collaboratively by corporate and staff after the incident. "Respect begins with honesty. Success follows naturally." Dwayne's phone buzzed as he stepped into the sunlight. It was Mara. Another tip had come in from a small location in Nebraska, different details, but the same underlying issue. Without hesitation, Dwayne replied, "Send a team. I'll meet them there tomorrow." As he glanced in the rearview mirror at Sunrise Diner number 28, now glowing in the morning light, he knew that while the building looked the same, everything inside had changed, and all because one exhausted server had dared to tell the truth to a man she thought was just passing through. The weeks that followed the shake-up at Sunrise Diner number 28 saw ripples that spread far beyond the confines of a single restaurant. For the staff there, the transformation wasn't just visible, it was palpable. Dwayne Johnson had made sure of it. But while the atmosphere inside the diner had shifted, the story outside continued to unfold. The confrontation between Dwayne and the Hendersons had spread across social media like wildfire. Headlines framed it as a viral moment of corporate accountability, where a powerful CEO disguised himself to uncover the rot in his own company. Videos of the confrontation, captured by customers on smartphones, were shared millions of times, sparking heated debates about fairness, leadership, and the unseen labor that powers the service industry. For Cassie Taylor, however, the shift was personal. She had always believed hard work would speak for itself, but for too long her efforts had been stolen by a system rigged against her. Now, with Dwayne's trust and her new position, she was finally seeing the fruits of her labor. Each day, she arrived early, walking into a diner where her authority was respected, her voice heard. The fear of retaliation was gone. In its place, stood a quiet confidence, the knowledge that her ideas mattered, and her decisions shaped the future of Sunrise. 28 Dwayne kept his promise too. The new tip distribution protocol Cassie had helped design was rolled out company-wide, ensuring that no server, dishwasher, or host would ever have to face what she had. The anonymous reporting hotline became a permanent fixture, bypassing local management and routing complaints directly to corporate compliance. Every location in the chain now operated under stricter oversight, with surprise audits and transparent financial records. Word of the changes spread fast. Regional managers who once turned a blind eye were now hyper-vigilant. Staff morale improved, turnover rates dropped, and customer satisfaction scores ticked steadily upward. The impact was undeniable. Dwayne's quiet leadership style resonated in every corner of the company. He wasn't one for loud speeches or dramatic gestures, preferring instead to let actions speak louder than words. When he visited other locations, sometimes in disguise, sometimes openly, he listened more than he spoke. He sat in on pre-shift meetings, sampled the food, and watched interactions between staff and management. The message was clear. No one was beyond scrutiny, but everyone was capable of redemption. Even Stan, the regional manager who had once vouched for Doug Henderson, was given a second chance. Instead of being fired, he underwent intensive retraining in employee advocacy and fraud detection. With Cassie's guidance, Stan now led workshops teaching managers how to spot the warning signs of unethical practices and how to create safe environments for their teams. For Dwayne, the experience was a sobering reminder of the responsibility that came with leadership. The success of a company wasn't measured by spreadsheets or profit margins alone, but by the well-being of its people. He had seen firsthand how easily a toxic culture could take root and how powerful it was when one person dared to speak up. His respect for Cassie had grown tenfold, and he wasn't shy about telling anyone who would listen. When he spoke at the company's annual leadership summit, he told the story of a brave server who had unknowingly changed the course of an entire company. He made it clear that true innovation didn't just come from new menu items or fancy technology. It came from trust, transparency, and the courage to challenge the status quo. And in the quiet moments, away from the public eye, Dwayne reflected on how much one small act of honesty could transform not just a restaurant, but an entire industry. He had come to Sunrise Diner, this 28, as a CEO in disguise, but he left as something more, a leader who understood that the heart of any business wasn't its profits, but its people. And thanks to Cassie's courage and his own willingness to listen, that heart was beating stronger than ever. 2 months after the confrontation that upended Sunrise Diner, thus to 28, a sleek black car pulled up to the security gate of Sunrise Innovations headquarters. The guard, seeing the name on the ID card, checked the list and waved the vehicle through. Inside, Dwayne Johnson waited, standing by the window of his top-floor office, watching as the car approached. He had invited someone special for a meeting, a conversation he'd been considering since the day the truth at Sunrise the 28 came to light. As the elevator doors slid open, Beatrix Thornwald, now a former judge, stepped out. Her hair was pulled back in a simple bun, her eyes sharp and assessing as always, though her posture was less formal, more relaxed. Dwayne met her with a firm handshake and a nod of respect. "Thank you for coming," he said. Beatrix offered, a small smile. I wasn't sure I'd say yes, but curiosity got the better of me. Together, they walked through the glass-walled corridors, past engineers and designers busy with prototypes and digital models. In a private conference room, Dwayne poured 2 coffees and gestured for her to sit. "I wanted to talk about what's next," he began. "Not just for the diner, but for the bigger picture. You know what we found? There was more than just one bad apple. It was a system designed to hide corruption in plain sight. And that system was allowed to thrive because no one was paying attention or willing to listen when someone did speak. Up. Beatrix sipped her coffee, her gaze thoughtful. You're talking about culture change. That's not an easy thing to build or to sustain. Dwayne nodded. Exactly. Which is why I wanted to ask you, would you consider joining us? Not as a consultant or advisor, but as part of the team. Someone who understands both the legal side and the human side of these issues. Someone who knows what it's like to be underestimated and what it takes to stand up for what's right. For a long moment, Beatrix said nothing. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out her judicial robe, carefully folded. I brought this with me, she said quietly, laying it across the table. Not because I intend to use it again, but because it's a reminder of why I chose to enter the legal profession in the first place. It wasn't about prestige or power. It was about protecting people from systems that treated them as expendable. Dwayne leaned forward. That's exactly what I need. Someone who can see the bigger picture, who can remind us every day why integrity matters more than profits. Beatrix met his gaze, her expression softening. Then let's make a deal, Mr. Johnson, she said. I'll join your team on one condition. Dwayne's brow lifted in surprise. Name it, Beatrix smiled. That we never stop listening to the Cassies of the world. No matter how big we grow or how many successes we achieve, we keep the door open for those who dare to tell the truth. Dwayne's face lit with a rare, genuine smile. Deal, he said. They shook hands, sealing a new partnership born not from contracts or obligations, but from shared purpose and respect. Outside the window, the city stretched out under a rising sun. Somewhere far below, Cassie was starting her shift, unaware of the conversation taking place above. But she'd feel its effects soon enough, because now, thanks to her courage and Dwayne's resolve, the company was no longer just a business. It was a promise that no one would be ignored and that integrity would always have a place at the table. So, what did we learn today? We learned that no act of courage is too small to spark change. That sometimes it takes a single person like Cassie to shine a light on injustice. And that when leaders like Dwayne Johnson listen, real transformation is possible. But here's the bigger question. How many other Cassies are out there waiting for someone to listen? If this story made you feel outraged, inspired, or just plain hopeful for a better world, hit that like button to show your support. Share this video with your friends and family so they can see how standing up for what's right can change lives. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, because you deserve to know the truth behind the headlines. Together, let's build a world where fairness, honesty, and courage aren't the exceptions, but the rules.